for our coffee chat.
I got
So
my
I have
coffee.
Lori. Excellent. Yes, me too. So I have Lori Johnson joining me today. We're going to chat about intensive outpatient programs. And I thought we could start talking about like why intensive outpatient programs are beneficial to clients. Like, why is that like the next step up in treatment?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I think there's a lot of myths that we come up against sometimes, I think, in our community. Like, we don't know what that looks like. And then, honestly, over a really large duration of time, it has changed. I guess I want to talk about what an IOP is first. An
Mhm.
IOP is an intensified program, usually in which a person would go to a treatment facility. So, and we say treatment facility because those are kind of the insurance words of what it's referred to as, and it makes it sound like very official. And
Kind of
it
like
is
cold
official.
cut, like it's just very boxy, essentially.
Yeah, like what is that? Intensified treatment program. These programs are, they're sometimes in hospital facilities, they're sometimes on medical campuses, but typically it just looks like a therapy office that you would go into. And maybe some of those offices are a little bit bigger, but it's housing like particular groups so that a lot of people can go to this intensified program at the same time. So I think we make it sound really sterile and also really scary, but you're just coming into a building to do this intensified amount of treatment. You don't have to put on a hospital gown. You can wear your normal clothes, you can bring your normal stuff, but it's like a structured program for a certain amount of time, anywhere from 3 hours a day to some programs are up to 9 or 10 hours a day. Um, and then typically you would go home afterward, and sometimes there's a break in between for lunch. Often, I think more and more modernly, we're looking at these programs and seeing that they're virtual. So just like you and I are meeting, we would have a lot more people in this meeting having specified discussions and learning around how you seek recovery, how you do exposures. You're just intensifying the amount of time that you would normally do that on your own. And for many people, that can be helpful because you're kind of getting over the hump of how you would prevent yourself from going to the next step or prevent yourself from doing exposures a little bit longer and learning more about where OCD overlap is.
Yeah. Okay. And I mean, when you talk about, getting over the hump, it's not necessarily always because my symptoms are more severe than somebody else in treatment. It could also be I want to move quicker through my treatment, or I want more for my treatment.
Yeah, no, I think that's one of the myths about intensive outpatient programming in general is that you have to be really severe. You don't actually. There is a certain criteria for insurance to say you meet the criteria for being here, and programs do have an admission criteria. Even our smaller program has admission criteria. But that's to say, yes, our program is a good fit for you. And the goals that you want to achieve is also a good fit for you. Because IOP is kind of like the next bump up from individual therapy and group therapy. It's
Mhm.
like the first step in that. There's partial hospitalization program, there's intensive, inpatient programs, and then
Mhm.
there's residential programs. So this is kind of the first step of more intensive services, but not the last. So I think there's this misnomer about if I'm going into these like bigger programs, I'm going to be hospitalized. Those aren't
Yeah.
one and the same. There's still like four more rungs of on the ladder to climb to get to those more intensified programs that are 24 hours a day.
Yeah, and I think that even in my own work as a professional, that's usually where I see clients get confused when we talk about like a higher
Yeah.
level of care needing something a little bit more for their treatment to reach their treatment goals is they immediately jump to I'm going inpatient, or I'm not bad enough, air
Yeah.
quotes, right? And so I think that's where a lot of like the miscommunication misnomers are in like higher levels of care, is that there's nothing between weekly sessions and inpatient. So
Yeah, or maybe even a higher level of care technically is, and often I think we do this as OCD professionals and maybe professionals who are also treating like PTSD or depression, is that we increase the frequency. And if we said that versus the higher level of care, we might freak people out a lot less. But it's these nuances and kind of the language of our profession that we're kind of reinforcing this idea that that means something really big. And for some people, it really does mean that you're going from outpatient psychotherapy to a residential program. And that doesn't mean that you're really sick and ill either. It means that you meet the criteria to have this supportive environment so that you can get better and go back to your life.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I'm glad you bring up support, because I think that's another myth that's commonly thought of in higher levels of care, is that you're sort of tucked away and you don't have the support and you're just in treatment 24/7, and there's no actual individualized support, which also isn't true. A lot of programs are, especially ours, is geared towards the individual progress and treatment and goals of that one particular client, and providing them the support to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of coming down to specifically our program, which is about 24 hours in total over 3 weeks. So we're at about 2 hours each day. And we've structured that because we feel like you can take 2 hours out of your day, plus the time that you need to like do your homework and practice exposures and utilize some of the things that you're learning. Like that's what it's there for. You take what you learn in the program about OCD and or about yourself or about what you're uncovering, and then you integrate that in your day, and then you come back again and you get an opportunity to like process it with the group and with our staff, and then take that back in your day. So there's this kind of weaving or integrating or braiding together. And that is kind of an expectation. And that is where these intensified programs help. Because, I mean, when I go to therapy, I usually have something to do right after.
Yeah.
And if you don't create that time and space, like you're not going to integrate what you learn and what you need.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's kind of a common like, okay, well, if I go to program, right, or an intensified higher level of care, I'm going to be fixed. It means that you're going to have to do some work too. And we're going to
Mm-hmm.
help you. We're going to support you. We're going to surround you with all the tools that you need. But after the 2 hours for that day or after program with the 3 weeks ends, you still have to do the work when we're not
Yeah.
there. And that's the biggest challenge, I think. I mean, I'm sure you know as a therapist too, like, what do you hear from your
100%.
clients?
100%. I feel like this is a we kind of giggle about it when you talk to clients of like, I wish that I had, the magic potion on my bookcase, essentially saying like, here, this is going to fix, or the special like how to manual to get from point A in treatment to point Z. And it's not there, and it is a lot on the clients to take what they're learning and put it into practice into their everyday life. And then as like their support team, their clinical team, it's also on us to help them take the material and mold it to their individual life, so that they can apply it and not feel stuck of, okay, how do I take what Jenny's talking about or what Lori's talking about and actually use it?
Yeah.
And
No,
I
I
think
totally agree.
that's
And
tough.
yeah, they're also teaching the people in their life,
Mm-hmm.
their partner, their like my clients go back and talk about like what they're doing and say, hey, this, thing happened in therapy today, or this thing happened in group. And they're teaching someone else about how to teach them to keep doing their own recovery too. Like it's a multi-level process about taking what you're learning into your life versus just like, okay, I'm leaving here and I'm going to go do an exposure. Doing an exposure in isolation, it's really hard to make it effective and weave that throughout your life. So
Yeah.
when we give you homework, we don't want to just like mark up your, put red marks on your paper or be like, yeah, you did it. We want to celebrate that with you because we want you to take those pieces into your life and teach other people, and so that it becomes kind of second nature to the person who's suffering with OCD.
Yeah.
And those are the
Yeah. And
moments that we celebrate. Like I get really excited as a therapist to be like, oh my gosh, I'm not
yeah.
giving you an A. I just want to know that you did it.
Well, right. Well, and I mean, we can't earn A's in life, right? Life throws
No.
us way too many curveballs to get A's in life. But I think that that speaks back to the myth we were just talking about, that you don't get support in IOPs, and we want to be a part of our clients and group members' celebration when they do an excellent job in their exposures or their homework practice, come to group and they share a success. Like we want to be a part of that cheer, that celebration, and that's really important. And I think it's a critical component of the support that we give in our IOP and other IOPs. So
Yeah. I mean, we get excited with you and we also get sad with you. And like, we're a part of that journey too. And of course, you have to take these things back to your life. But being in a group, ooh, that's another one. Like, we haven't talked about that yet. Like, people are scared to be in a group,
mm-hmm.
especially with OCD. Like, we don't want to be seen. We don't want to let other people know that we're struggling because it
Yeah.
means something about who we are or what's going on or what we're able to tolerate. But yeah, like when you see someone, and you know this, like what happens in your groups when somebody gets to celebrate, it does motivate others.
It does. It does. And I think that one, voicing that, success, or even the harder flip side, right? A challenge. Like I had a really big challenge. That's voicing vulnerability in a group, which is scary. Even though we're saying something positive, like that can be scary too, of sharing, like, I did this and it turned out really well, or I challenged this way and I had this success. And when you do celebrate as a group, as like with your group members, as the clinician facilitating the group, you see it across everybody's faces.
Yeah.
And it does provide some motivation, because it's it's not because I want to also, or not, it's not just only I want to also have that success. It's also seeing that success is possible,
Yeah.
because I think that's a big part with OCD, and why people hide, right, with their symptoms and their thoughts and their behaviors, because even though they want to feel better, they don't always believe that it's possible. And so I think that sharing those successes in group can also instill that hope.
Yeah. And sometimes that makes it scary. Like, I mean, I'm just thinking about sitting with clients in session who haven't had those successes yet. They think you're full of crap. It's like this is something you read about in a book, and until they get there, it's really hard to see, kind of like seeing the forest through the trees. But also, like, I think sometimes we take that back into our sessions. Like, I'm thinking about days where we've had IOP groups and like people have made a ton of progress, and then you go into your individual session later in the afternoon and you're like, I'm pumped, let's do the work. And they're like, oh wait, you're bringing a totally different energy in than, and it's other people's recovery. Like we're holding
Yeah.
a space for that too and encouraging other people. So it's kind of this whole circle of life in the OCD realm, and the work that we're doing, and how sometimes we have to just hold space for others who aren't quite there yet in
Yeah.
that recovery and haven't had those celebrations to keep going.
hmm Yeah. Which I think is in ERP and OCD work, I think having that hope and that motivation is extremely critical, because we're asking to do really scary things. I always describe it to my clients that I'm asking you to go nose to nose with a bear because it's scary. I'm asking you to face like core fears, things
Yeah,
that really rock you. And so it's important to celebrate the successes when they come, and also to continue the motivation even when we don't have the successes. Where do we find the motivation? So
totally. Yeah, and like I don't know, going nose to nose with a bear, I don't want to do that. I want to see a bear, but I want to see the bear in like this protective cage, and I think that's like really equivalent to the ERP work, is being willing to look at it and willing to fight it and face it.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Because I agree with you, and that's why I use that analogy with my clients. I don't want to go nose to nose with a bear either.
No. We all want to
But
say we
if
saw a bear.
right, I was able to see it through the bubble or the fence. Like it's fine. We're protected. But if the bear is in my way of living the desired life that I want, then where am I going to find the hope and the motivation to go nose to nose with the bear?
Totally.
So,
Yeah. And I think like in that level of care and what we're able to provide, it's really hard to even sign up for that, because sometimes like going
mhm,
to that next level and saying, you know what, I need more than what I'm getting right now. And that doesn't mean I'm bad. I think sometimes depression and kind of a wave of sadness can come through for people who their clinician or us as clinicians say, I think you need a higher level of care. It's basically saying you need to do more homework. And I don't think that's it's effective enough in doing it on your own. And that's not a failure. It's just like, hey, you need more. Here's the road to, here's one pathway to success.
mhm,
Do it more frequently, be in a group, be vulnerable, like have multiple clinicians' ideas around you. It's more than just you're not doing good enough, you're
mhm,
not getting better. It's just like you need something different.
mhm. Yeah. Well, and I think you bring up a good point in your comment of doing more, right? The intensive side of like these programs, and that leads me to the question, like another myth, not a question, another myth that clients typically have about IOPs or higher levels of care is how am I going to fit it into my schedule, right?
Yeah.
1 hour a week in outpatient therapy, I can manage that, right? I can tuck it in after work or at lunch break. But where am I going to put a program, a weekly program,
Yeah.
daily program in my schedule?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. A lot of the reason why we pick the time that we have, because that can give people the opportunity and the flexibility, because we have, you know, a wonderful program here with Rogers, and then we have Pathlight, which treats, you know, just more than just OCD and anxiety. But it's, I could take an extended lunch and fit this in. Of course, we don't want you going on a 2 hour lunch and then going right back to work. You're going to
Hmm.
have to navigate some of the parts of your day after work and after things to dive back into willingly, dive back into the work and practice what you learned, or journal about it, or talk with someone about it. But we picked the time from like 11 to 1 so that midday you could potentially work this within your schedule. But I think the number one thing is you're going to have to give yourself permission to uproot your life just a little bit
Hmm.
and say, I'm willing to change my schedule to do this. Because if we're not willing, you're going to come to this 2 hours, you're going to come to program, and then you're not going to do anything. You're going to show up, but like you have to be willing to kind of like deconstruct what your schedule looks like. And that's hard for any of us. Like, even if I have to change my lunchtime, I'm hungry. By the way, you can eat snacks in our program because we're virtual. But like what does that look like? And who? Maybe your therapist helps you, maybe your family helps you, maybe you need someone to walk your dog. Maybe you have to ask work for a schedule modification so that you can seek recovery in a different way.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that it's important to highlight that we're not expecting, or we don't advise that clients come to our program, do the 2 hour group, and like immediately hop back, like you said, back into work. Like allow it to like soak in, like take that moment, because the group isn't easy. It's not as though, for example, we're asking you to come and just tell us how your day is. Did you go for a walk with your dog? What'd you have for breakfast? We're talking about really hard things.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the group, you might have more that you need to process. Think about, how am I going to challenge? What do I want to bring maybe back to next group,
Yeah.
to talk more about, instead of just I'm all done and back to work I go. So,
Yeah. Because there's so much learning quickly. And that's the thing about the intensive element of the program, is that you're learning at a faster pace, faster than you can implement some of the stuff. So you do need that reflection time.
mhm,
And it is meant to, right, like the things that you learn in a 1 hour or 2 hours a week in outpatient therapy versus the 2 hours that you get with a whole group of people and clinicians who have different ideas and beliefs and ways of doing things and creativity. Your mind is just like, whoa, this is like a lot. Like some people want to take notes,
mhm,
which is fine, but like you need that reflection time afterwards to be like, here were my takeaways. Here's how this is hitting me emotionally. I'm sad. And now I'm thinking about all these other people that I've never met before. Hopefully, that's not a distraction. It's a helper for you of like, wow, I didn't even think that I could do it that way. I've been only doing it this one way. It just kind of
mhm,
bursts you open and blossoms what needs to be there. And really is motivating because I know it's motivating for us as clinicians too to be like, yes,
absolutely. Well, and I think that this time that we're talking about carving out after group is also a part of that, applying the skills to your daily life. You know, if we jump straight from group to back to work or another activity, or thing, like we don't allow ourselves that processing time,
yeah,
we're not allowing ourselves to think about, what does this mean for me?
yeah, the
Me,
impact of it.
just me, not the group, just me. How does this impact me? And and that's why we're suggesting it and recommending it. So yeah.
Totally. And like your clients share with you, because sometimes our clients are in the intensive outpatient program. Your clients share with you how it impacts them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for our program, we recommend that you continue seeing your primary therapist at least once a week, to have like that individual time, because our program, the groups are group therapy based. We don't have individual therapy space in our program, which is why we recommend keep seeing your primary at least once a week, so you have that individual space to
Mhm.
process and talk about, because the clients that are part of our program are working with an OCD specialist,
Yeah,
and they understand what's going on and what we're talking about, and can help the client make it more applicable. Okay, this is what you talked about in group. Here's how we're going to mold it specifically to you, and how you can use it at
yeah,
home, at work, in the car, with your partner, your kids, your dog, like whatever,
yeah,
right? And I think that's really important, and very unique also with our program in comparison to what I've seen with other IOPs, is that I've had clients that go into IOPs and they come back after a few months when they're done. And I'm like, how'd it go? And I think that having that primary check-in still going on throughout the program can be helpful to
yeah.
provide, like I said, that individual space.
And I think often clients are teaching their therapist, like, hey, here's what I learned something in group and we've never talked about that. Or it sparked this other thing within me. So that's why I think, the collaboration that we have with the program and coordinating with other therapists, it's also
Mhm,
changing them and being like, I didn't even think about what we were doing in this way. And like, I'm so glad that that's in the program because otherwise my client wouldn't have mentioned it and we wouldn't have changed the direction of where treatment is going. So
mhm.
Yeah, it's just really cool. I really like that. And we also get to meet new people all the time and have new
Yeah.
goals and also hear about the progress that they're making outside of program. It's really cool.
Absolutely. And I think that another cool highlight of our program and groups that we've ran in the past is that every group member that has come has learned something new. They
Uh-huh.
have not come and known everything that we touch on because we touch on a lot. We touch on ERP, ICBT, ACT, CBT techniques. So we touch on a lot within our 3-week program. And even if clients say, like, yes, I'm doing ERP with my primary, or we utilize some CBT components, I know about ACT, they always leave saying, I didn't know that, or I learned something. And I think that's amazing as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And sometimes there's relationships. Obviously, there's some ethical pieces around this. We're not encouraging you to have relationships outside of group, but there are relationships that are built, and people go from, oh my gosh, I don't know how I'm going to be in a group. I don't want to be in a group. I really hate that part. Can't I just do all this work individually? They go from that to being like, wow, I can't even imagine how I would have done this without this group of people
Hmm. Yeah.
and without this group of clinicians. And I was really scared and nervous. Obviously, there's a lot of social anxiety overlapping with OCD and
Yeah.
agoraphobia and other phobias. Like, there's kind of a holistic piece of this program, too, that people at the end are like, I don't know how I would have done this without the group. Even though I was so resistant, that was the part I hated. I ended up loving that.
Yeah, most definitely, because even though we hear it all the time, that group is nobody's favorite,
Yeah.
essentially. Um, I think that there's an added element that is easily identified in individual treatment, that even though the client knows that they're not the only one with OCD in the entire world, it feels so isolating.
Yeah.
And coming to group, even with the social anxiety, the nervousness, the I don't like group, I think that seeing and hearing other people, even if the obsessions and the compulsions are not the same, I'm not the only one. I'm
Yeah.
not the only one, and having that level of support as well, and understanding is huge in treatment.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a really great point. Like, everyone is so fearful that they're the only one with like HOCD, POCD, sexual
Mhm.
orientation, that they're going to be the only one in the group that's like this outlier of having like the worst taboo theme of OCD. But I mean, we know OCD and the it doesn't have any bounds. It doesn't have any bounds,
No.
and it doesn't, you're not going to be the only one in group with that theme. So a little bit of reassurance providing to everyone out there, but like, you're not going to be the only one with that theme, and you're not going to be in isolation where no one else understands that theme. In fact, it's going to open up other people to finally be able to say, you know what, I've never told my therapist I have that theme too. And you
Yeah.
talking about it motivated and inspired me to start talking about it here in the group, because I thought I was the only one. And sometimes this is the only platform that an individual has met another person with OCD and met another person with their
Yes.
theme. It's like
Yes.
the idea of knowing that it's out there. You know, we have the IOCDF and OCD Game Changers and all these organizations that are putting that information out there. But meeting another person and feeling that belongingness and that acceptance, that is
Mhm.
like so much different than the logical, like, yeah, I know, but I don't feel belonged and
Yes.
surrounded
Yes.
that way.
Yes, absolutely. And we talked earlier about motivation, and I think, like you said, that provides motivation as well.
I have
Having
goosebumps
that,
right now. Like,
I
it
do
really
too as well.
does.
I'm like, "Oh my gosh," like, yes. It provides the motivation for clients to keep going even after the group closes, right?
Yeah.
after the group ends. Maybe it's a recommendation for another group. Things along those lines so that they can continue feeling that belongingness and the understanding, because it can be crucial to
Yeah.
treatment and recovery. So
Totally.
absolutely.
And even for us too, as clinicians, like every group that we're done with our IOP, we take more information that we learned from all the group members to be like, okay, how do we make this better next time? How do
Yeah.
we incorporate the cool things that they had to say? Yeah, we're just all learning. It's just such a really cool collaborative process. And I think that sometimes it's hard to be like, oh, I'm going to go in this higher level of care with all these professional therapists. We have fun with it. And
Yeah.
like we're also learning from you all. It's not that we don't know what we're doing, but each and every person that comes to our group brings something different to the table that we didn't think about or have before. That even though we're providing this like structured programmatic things to help everyone with recovery, we find ways to make it funner
Hmm.
and better and less intimidating, because you're going to have to do exposures regardless. So we might as well
Yeah.
make the process a bit funner along the way too.
Absolutely, which I think is why we've incorporated, for example, like art for therapy activity
That was
and
your idea.
not just discussion elements, because I know that I am a hands-on learner. And I know I'm also not the only one out there that's a hands-on learner, but I think taking all of those into considerations, and I know that art isn't for everybody, but taking all of those things into consideration so that it's not just come to our group and we're going to talk at you.
Yeah.
That's not what our group is about. It's not how we structure it, because we know it's not helpful for everybody.
No, it's
And
not a class. It's not a class. We're not your
right.
teacher. You don't get a grade in life. You get your emotions back and you let like kind of the thoughts go in the background a bit more. Like totally.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. So, well, I know that we're almost out of time, and I wanted to bounce real quick. Just we've talked some points of our IOP at In Focus Counseling, but I wanted to make sure that we hit all of the highlights of our IOP before we end. So, what else is there to know about our IOP, Lori?
Well, we run virtually and we're able to service multiple states, which is a blessing. So we service Colorado and Montana, and we're trying to add more states to that because we know that even though we're kind of in a big metropolis here in Denver, there are a lot of sparse rural communities like surrounding all of us and all the way up through Montana. So we provide this program virtually, and it will eventually incorporate some in-person components. We have a variety of clinicians who have been very well trained and are treating OCD actively in integrating their ideas. So we have, CBT, exposure and response prevention, inference-based cognitive behavioral therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy, compassion-focused treatment, peer support, yoga nidra, like in the body. We're trying to integrate all of these things into this really holistic care model that can be done for people struggling with OCD. And I'm happy about that. And I know it will continue to grow. So we've gone from like a 1 to 2 week IOP to a 3 week IOP, Monday through Friday. Thursday has kind of a little bit of a break, but is the body integration piece. So from 11 to 1, to where people can work on integrating this into their life. Did I miss anything? We have a lot of really cool stuff.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think you touched on that the highlights. Our next IOP is running in April. But you can click a link in the description below to go to our website to look at future dates as well. We try to plan them all out each year so that they're all ready. And I think it's been helpful for clients in the past when they call and it didn't work for me. And so we've really kind of brought that to our planning for the groups as well, that we have them all planned out for the year. So if April doesn't work, you can already be looking forward to the one that I believe July is our one after that,
Yeah,
a shorter summer one.
Yep, and you can see them on the website. You can also go ahead and like do your intake now for a later program. And that's a really good point about like the planning piece of things that you asked about before is this is how you can plan is that we already have these dates planned for the rest of the year. You're not going to need to leave your therapist. You have time to figure it out. We also have some payment plans and financing options available for people because it's this program in particular is not covered by insurance because we're trying to keep it small. And
Mhm.
we can kind of pre-run some of your benefits and let you know if that CPT code is covered and kind of be a part of that planning piece for you too, also financially.
Yeah.
It's not that it's not covered by insurance. It's that we are not a direct provider of insurance. So people would have to submit for reimbursement, which is our program has had a really high rate of people being able to get reimbursed depending on their benefits. So it's been great.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, all of that information is on our website.
Mhm.
And that I'll provide a link and like I said in the description that'll take anybody that's watching directly there. Um well, is there anything else that we've missed? I think we've had a fabulous conversation
It's
about
been great.
intensive outpatient programs and even our intensive outpatient program at In Focus Counseling. But have I missed anything, Lori?
I mean, I'm sure there's a lot we missed, Jennifer, but I don't, nothing that comes to mind. I would just encourage anyone who has questions that we didn't answer today to reach out to us and ask. We're really collaborative. We love working in our community and the community of OCD therapists. So we're just hoping if this is a good fit. And if you have any extra questions, just reach out to our team. We'll answer them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, Lori, thank you so much for joining me today on our coffee chat on intensive outpatient programs. I greatly appreciate it, and I know you'll be back for future topics in the future. So, thank you so much, and you have a wonderful day. Okay,
Thank you. You too. Thanks, Jennifer.
bye.